My name is Kaitlyn, I'm 34 years old, and what I'm about to tell you actually happened in our family house. The same one where we once laughed around the dinner table, fought over who'd get the last slice of cheesecake, and sang old songs in the living room on Christmas Eve. But that house, my childhood home, turned into the stage for something darker. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about family. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe if you're hearing this on the channel, because what happened next is not just a story about betrayal. It's about standing up when even your own blood turns against you. It started on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I'd just driven down from the city. 2 hours on the highway, windows cracked, the same playlist I used to blast in college playing low in the background. Dad had called earlier that week, insisting I come down for a family dinner. He said it in that stiff, rehearsed tone he used whenever he was trying to sound warm but couldn't quite pull it off. Mom texted too. Be here by 6. Dress nice. Your brother will be home too. That last line made my stomach tighten. My brother Ethan. The golden boy. The one who could do no wrong, at least in their eyes. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since I'd found out he'd borrowed money in my name. I didn't report it. I should have. But I thought, he's my brother. He'll fix it. I was wrong. When I pulled up to the house, the air felt thick, humid with tension. The curtains were drawn even though it was still daylight. I stood outside for a second, just staring at that white-painted porch, remembering the years when I used to sit there reading books while Mom brought me lemonade. Funny how a place can hold so many versions of you, and still feel completely foreign. Inside, everything looked too perfect. The table was set for 4 polished glasses, silverware lined up like it was Thanksgiving. A bottle of red wine sat in the center, uncorked. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, but underneath it, there was something else. That electric scent of anxiety. Dad greeted me with a stiff smile. Kaitlyn, he said, as if testing the word. Mom's smile was thinner. You made it, she murmured, brushing non-existent dust off her apron. And then Ethan walked in. Hands in pockets, wearing that smug grin I used to mistake for charm. Hey sis, he said, voice dripping with casual arrogance. Still driving that old Toyota? I forced a smile. Still living off Dad's money? His grin faltered for half a second, but he laughed it off. Touché. Dinner started stiffly. Clinking cutlery. Small talk. The kind of forced politeness that only families skilled in emotional warfare can pull off. It wasn't until the plates were cleared and the wine glasses refilled that Dad cleared his throat. We have something for you, he said. Mom smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. She reached under the table and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box. Gold paper. Red ribbon. For me? I asked, surprised. Dad nodded. A family gift. I took it cautiously. The box was light, too light. I unwrapped it slowly, half expecting jewelry or some sentimental token from my childhood. But when the paper fell away, what I found was an envelope, thick, cream-colored, sealed with wax. Inside, a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then the words started sinking in. Loan agreement. Total balance. $450,000. Co-signer, Kaitlyn Sanders. Froze. What is this? Ethan leaned back, smirking. You remember that business I started last year? Turns out it didn't exactly work out. Dad took a sip of wine before speaking. We paid what we could. But since your name is already attached, the remaining balance. Well, we decided it's only fair that you handle it. I blinked at him. You decided. Mom's voice was quiet, but sharp. Ethan's been through enough, Kaitlyn. He's family. You have a good job. You can manage it. I laughed. The kind of laugh that cracks when you're too shocked to breathe. You want me to pay his $450,000 debt? Are you out of your minds? Dad's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. I'm sorry, I said, still clutching the paper. But you can't just. Before I could finish, he stood up abruptly, grabbing his wine glass. I thought he was leaving, until the cold splash hit my face. The red liquid dripped down my cheek, stinging my eyes, staining my blouse. "Don't you ever speak to me like that," he hissed. "You're lucky we're giving you the chance to do something for this family." Mom gasped, not at what he did, but at my silence afterward. She slammed her palm on the table. "Get out. If you won't help your brother, then you don't belong here." For a moment everything blurred. The smell of wine and roast chicken mixed with the metallic taste of humiliation. I didn't say another word. I just dropped the paper on the table, grabbed my purse and walked out the door. Outside the air was cold. My hands were shaking. I didn't even realize I was crying until I got into my car and saw the smudged makeup in the rearview mirror. I sat there for 20 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to understand how everything had turned so cruel so fast. That's when the knock came. A firm, deliberate knock on my window. I startled, heart racing, and turned. A man stood there. Tall, wearing a dark coat, expression unreadable. Not someone I recognized. I rolled the window down slightly. "Can I help you?" He leaned closer. "You're Kaitlyn Sanders." "Yes." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder. "Your father asked me to give you this." I hesitated, then took it through the small gap in the window. Before I could ask another question, he added quietly, "You should read it. Then decide what kind of daughter you want to be." And with that, he turned and walked back toward the house. I opened the folder. Inside were photos, grainy, printed on glossy paper. Pictures of Ethan standing with two men I didn't recognize. The background looked like some warehouse or dockyard. One of the men had a tattoo on his neck, a snake wrapped around a dagger. And underneath the photos, another sheet. A contract. This time not a loan. It was a transfer of ownership, apparently giving me responsibility for something called Collins Maritime Imports, a business I'd never heard of. But when I scanned the fine print, I saw it again, Ethan's signature, and mine forged right beneath it. That was the moment everything in me went cold. They weren't just trying to dump his debt on me. They were trying to make me a target. I started the car and drove off, shaking. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. "You'll regret walking out like that. We did what we had to do." I didn't reply. Not then. Because something inside me had already shifted. Something quiet, sharp, and steady. If they thought they could ruin me, they were about to learn exactly what kind of daughter I could be. The drive back to my apartment that night felt endless. The highway lights stretched like a blur of gold streaks against the dark sky. My mind spinning faster than the tires. I must have replayed the dinner 100 times. Dad's voice, Mom's cold stare, the splash of wine. But what haunted me most wasn't their cruelty. It was the look in Ethan's eyes. Not guilt, not fear, satisfaction. When I reached home, I didn't go straight to bed. I sat on the floor beside my couch, folder open, staring at those photos again. The two men beside Ethan. I didn't recognize them, but something about their posture screamed danger. They weren't business partners. They were collectors. And then the contract. Collins Maritime Imports. A shell company, probably. But why forge my name? Why risk everything to drag me into it? That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to find out everything. The next morning I took the day off work and drove to the address printed faintly at the bottom of one of the papers. An office space in a rundown part of town. A cracked blue door with faded gold letters that read, Collins Maritime Logistics. When I stepped inside, the smell hit first. Damp carpet and stale coffee. A single woman sat behind a desk, tapping at her computer. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm looking for Ethan Sanders. He's supposed to have an office here." Her fingers froze mid-typing. Then, after a moment, she said flatly, "He hasn't been here in weeks." I frowned. "Do you know where I can reach him?" She hesitated, then leaned forward. "Are you family?" "Yes." "His sister?" Something flickered in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe. Pity. She lowered her voice. "If you're smart, you'll stop asking questions. Those men he's been meeting with. They don't like people snooping. I felt my throat tighten. What men? But she only shook her head and looked toward the door. You should go. I left, but the warning did the opposite of what she intended. That same evening I started digging. Old emails, bank statements, calls to old friends of Ethan's. It took hours, but by midnight I had enough breadcrumbs to draw a map, and that map led to a single name that kept popping up. Lucas Kane. The man with the snake tattoo. When I looked him up, I almost stopped breathing. Kane wasn't just some street-level thug. He ran a private collection network that operated in the grayest corners of the law. Debts, assets, even people. If Ethan owed him money, and my name was on the papers, that meant I was next on the list. I barely slept that night. I kept hearing the man's voice, the one Dad sent to my car. Decide what kind of daughter you want to be. By morning, I knew what kind of daughter I'd be. The kind they'd regret betraying. The first step was silence. I stopped answering calls from home. When Mom tried texting, I left it on read. I blocked Ethan. I wanted them to think I'd vanished, or better yet, given up. But behind the scenes I started building my case. I called a friend from college, Emma, who now worked as a private investigator. We hadn't spoken in years, but when she heard the word forgery, her tone changed instantly. Send me everything, she said. And Kaitlyn, don't go anywhere alone. I did as she asked. Within 2 days, Emma had uncovered a web of transactions connecting Ethan's company to my father's personal accounts. Offshore wires. Shady consulting fees. Even Mom's name appeared in one. A payment of $50,000 labeled, family settlement. When Emma sent the report, she wrote only one line beneath it. They used you as the scapegoat. I remember staring at that message, hands trembling, realizing it wasn't just about the money. They wanted to protect Ethan, and sacrifice me to do it. 2 nights later, I got another visitor. It was close to midnight. Rain poured hard against the windows, and I was halfway through a cup of cold coffee when the buzzer went off. I checked the intercom. A man stood there. Not Kane. Younger, cleaner, wearing a long coat. He looked straight into the camera. Miss Sanders. My chest tightened. Who's asking? He pulled out an ID card, private security from Kane's company. I'm here on behalf of your brother. I almost hung up. But curiosity, or maybe rage, kept me still. What do you want? He hesitated. To deliver a message. Ethan's in trouble. He says he needs your help. My laugh came out hollow. Tell him he should have thought about that before forging my signature. I expected him to argue. Instead, he said quietly. He didn't forge it. That stopped me cold. What? He looked nervous. Your father did. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the rain outside. My pulse roared in my ears. You're lying, I said. But something in his eyes told me he wasn't. He reached into his pocket and slipped a folded paper under the lobby door. He said this would prove it. Then he turned and left before I could ask another word. When I unfolded it, my knees nearly gave out. It was a copy of the original contract, the one tying me to Ethan's debt. But this time, there was a security timestamp printed along the margin, proof of when the document had been scanned and uploaded. The date was months before Ethan's supposed loan. And the digital signature came from my father's company server. I sank onto the floor, clutching the paper, tears hot behind my eyes. All this time I thought Ethan had ruined me. But it was Dad. The man who'd raised me taught me to always protect the family name. He'd protected it by selling his daughters. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat by the window, watching the rain blur the city lights, planning. If they wanted me to pay their debts, fine. I'd pay them back. Not with money but with truth. The next week I set the stage. I told Emma to hold everything. The forged documents, the wire transfers, the evidence, until I gave the word. Then I sent a group text to my parents and Ethan. Family dinner. My place. Saturday. 7 p.m. I'll make it worth your while. Dad replied in under a minute. We'll be there. Course he would. He couldn't resist control. Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent all morning preparing. Not food, evidence. I printed everything, laid it out neatly on the dining table. I wanted them to see it, to see what they'd done. When they arrived, they looked almost relieved. Like nothing had happened. Mom even smiled. It's good you came to your senses, honey. I smiled back, calm, collected. I did. Ethan dropped into a chair, scrolling through his phone. Dad poured himself wine like last time. You said you had something for us, he said, sipping. I do. I slid the folder across the table. He frowned, opened it, and froze. Page after page. His secrets stared back at him. The forged signature. The offshore accounts. The timestamp that tied it all to him. His face drained of color. What is this? He demanded. The truth, I said quietly. You didn't just make me responsible for Ethan's debt. You made me a criminal in the process. Mom stood trembling. Kaitlyn, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. A recording began. Emma's voice, reading every detail of the investigation, time-stamped, backed up, and ready to forward to the authorities. Ethan swore under his breath. Dad's jaw locked tight. You wouldn't, he growled. I met his eyes. Try me. For a long silent minute, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. Finally, Mom whispered. What do you want? I smiled, slow, deliberate. Freedom. You will contact Kane. You will tell him the debt is settled. You will clear my name from everything. And then you will never speak to me again. Dad opened his mouth to protest, but I leaned forward. If you don't, the next dinner you'll be attending will be a courtroom hearing. He saw the look in my eyes. He knew I meant it. For the first time in my life, my father looked small. They left without another word. The house was silent again, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. Felt free. But freedom always comes with echoes. Because later that night, long after they'd gone, my phone buzzed again. Single message. No name. Just 5 words. You shouldn't have crossed him. I didn't sleep that night. That message. You shouldn't have crossed him. Kept replaying in my mind like a whisper I couldn't silence. I stared at my phone, half expecting another text, maybe a name, a clue, something. But there was nothing. Just those 5 words glowing in the dark, taunting me from the screen. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a bluff. Maybe Ethan trying to scare me. Maybe Dad testing if I'd cave. I refused to flinch. I brewed coffee, sat by the window, and told myself, it's over. But then I noticed something. Across the street, parked just past the lamppost, a black SUV. Tinted windows. Engine off. First I ignored it. People park there all the time. But when I left for work 2 hours later and came back that evening, it was still there. Same spot. Same silence. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I did what I'd learned to do best. Watch, wait, collect. 3 days passed. The SUV kept showing up. Never the same exact hour, but always nearby. I could feel the weight of its presence even when I couldn't see it. That creeping instinct that tells you you're not alone. On the 4th night, I decided to confront it. I waited until dusk, put on my coat, and went downstairs. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. The SUV was there. I approached slowly, pretending to scroll through my phone, every step heavier than the last. When I was close enough, I knocked on the window. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. I know you're in there. The door creaked open, just slightly. A man stepped out. Same man who'd delivered the folder that night at my parents' house. Kaitlyn, he said evenly. You shouldn't be out here. My pulse spiked. You're following me now. He didn't answer directly. You need to stop digging. It's not safe anymore. Just cough. Not safe. You tell me my father forged my name, now you stalk my building. You owe me an explanation. He hesitated, then looked around. Not here. Then where? He handed me a card. No name, no address, just an embossed symbol. A snake wrapped around a dagger. Kane's mark. My stomach dropped. You work for him. He nodded once. I did. But I'm trying to make it right. We met the next evening at a quiet cafe near the harbor. The kind of place where no one looks twice at strangers whispering in corners. He introduced himself properly this time. Aaron Wells, he said. I was one of Kane's debt collectors. I worked with your brother. My jaw tightened. Worked. As in, threatening people for money. He didn't flinch. At first. Then it became more than that. He explained that Ethan had borrowed the $450,000 to fund a shipment business with Kane's backing. But the shipments weren't what they seemed. They were laundering stolen goods, Aaron said quietly. Ethan didn't know at first. Your father did. I leaned forward. My father. Aaron nodded. He helped Kane move the money offshore. In return, Kane erased Ethan's debt. But when the authorities started snooping, your dad panicked. He needed someone to take the fall. Someone with clean credit, a quiet life, no criminal record. He looked at me. You were perfect. I sat there in stunned silence, every word slicing through me. My own father had sold me out, not just for money, but to protect his deals with criminals. And Kane asked finally, why the message? Aaron's eyes darkened. Because you humiliated your father. And in doing so, you cost Kane $500,000. He doesn't like unfinished business. I exhaled slowly. So what happens now? Aaron looked down at his coffee. You disappear. Or you fight back. That night, I stood on my balcony, city lights glittering below, wind cold against my face. Disappear. Well, they took my peace, my family, my name. I wasn't disappearing, not this time. I pulled out my phone and called Emma. I need to go bigger, I told her. How big? She asked. Big enough that if anything happens to me, the whole city hears about it. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, all right, let's burn this down properly. Over the next week we built the trap. Emma used her contacts to leak portions of the financial documents to a few journalists. Anonymous tips hinting at major corruption tied to a private maritime firm. I contacted a lawyer friend, arranged sealed evidence drops with timestamps, and sent copies of everything to an encrypted server. If they wanted to silence me, they'd have to erase every trace. By the time we were done, I had insurance. But insurance doesn't stop fear. One night, I came home to find my door slightly open. My breath caught. Pushed it slowly. Nothing looked stolen. But my laptop was gone, and on the dining table, someone had left a single red wine glass, half full. Chill ran through me. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. The next morning, Aaron called. He knows, he said. Kane knows you're fighting back. Let him, I said. But my voice shook when I hung up. That afternoon, I received another text, from an unknown number. You have 48 hours to return what's ours. Or you'll pay your brother's debt another way. I sent it straight to Emma. Can we trace it? She replied, already trying. But Kaitlyn, you might need to leave town for a while. I looked around my apartment, my books, my photos, my life. Everything I'd built on my own. No, I typed back. Not yet. The next 2 days were a blur of paranoia. Every sound outside made me jump. I barely ate, barely slept. Then, on the second night, 47 hours after that message, there was a crash outside my building. I ran to the window. A car, black, sleek, window smashed, was burning near the curb. Sirens wailed in the distance. My phone buzzed. One message. That was a warning. I felt my knees weaken. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and the hard drive with all the evidence. Then I called Aaron. He answered instantly. Where are you? Leaving. I can't stay here. Good. There's a place. An old warehouse by the docks. I'll meet you there in an hour. Bring everything. It was reckless, I know that now. But fear makes you do strange things, especially when you think you have one person left to trust. I drove through the rain, headlights cutting through the fog, the docks looming ahead like ghosts. The warehouse stood empty, metal doors half open. "Aaron!" called, stepping inside. No answer. Just the echo of my own voice. I walked deeper in, heart hammering. Then a sound behind me. A step. I spun around. It wasn't Aaron. It was Kane. He looked exactly like his photo. Tall, sharp suit, eyes like ice. "Miss Sanders," he said softly. "You've caused quite the mess." I backed away slowly. "I didn't steal anything. I just took back what was mine." He smiled thinly. "You exposed my network. Do you have any idea what that costs me?" My voice trembled. "You used my family. You forged my life." "Your family," he said, stepping closer, "sold you to me. I simply accepted the offer." The words cut deeper than any threat. Then I heard another voice behind him. "Aaron," Kane said, not even turning. "Good timing." My stomach dropped. Aaron stepped out of the shadows, eyes down, jaw tight. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "He found me first." Kane turned back to me. "Now, where's the hard drive?" I stared at Aaron, betrayal and disbelief mixing in my throat, but then slowly I lifted my chin. "You really think I'd bring the only copy?" Kane's smile faltered. "The moment I don't check in," I said quietly, "that data goes public. Every account, every name, yours included." For the first time he hesitated. We stood there, the three of us, the storm raging outside, thunder echoing like distant gunfire. Finally Kane exhaled. "You're clever. I'll give you that." He turned to Aaron. "Let her go." Aaron looked stunned. "What?" "I said let her go," Kane repeated, eyes still on me. "She's already dead on paper." He walked away, the sound of his shoes fading into the rain. When he was gone, Aaron stepped forward. "You need to disappear now. He won't stop hunting you." I stared at him, shaking, then whispered, "He just made a mistake." Aaron frowned. "What do you mean?" I met his eyes. "He let me go. That night I didn't run. I sent the rest of the files, every single one, to Emma. She sent them to the press. By morning, headlines screamed across every news outlet. Private maritime empire exposed. Political and financial scandal uncovered. Kane's operations unraveled. Investigations launched. My father's name hit the reports too. And Ethan's. The same house that threw me out was now surrounded by reporters. Should have felt like victory. But as I watched the chaos unfold on my TV, I couldn't shake the last thing Kane had said. "She's already dead on paper." 'Cause somewhere out there he was still free. And I knew this wasn't over. But one thing I've learned, when you dig up monsters, some of them never go back to sleep. If you're still here listening, don't forget to subscribe because trust me, the next part of this story hasn't been written yet.